Michael Blau. Did you find your Scientology training difficult and have just not chosen to mention that? As a Scientologist, I was a mediocre student and auditor, only ever at the public level, so my experience would clearly be different from yours. How was it for you as a student auditor and in supervisor training? It seems to me to be a shame that such rigorous and skilled attention is given to something that turns out to be a worthless scam. That rigor must be a part of what keeps people involved and believing that there is something worthwhile there. Your comments? Good question, Mike. Yeah, Scientology training definitely had its ups and downs for me over the years. When I first came on, I think I might have told this story. I've told it to a few people, and I couldn't recall if I had mentioned it in that long podcast that I did on the subject of Scientology training, but I'll tell you this because this is one of the ways that I was broken, as in the same way that you break an animal when you're training them, when I early on as in fact, I think it was on the first course I did. It was on this professional TRs course, this big hunky communications course. And this wasn't the public level communications course that people talk about. This was the pro one. And it was the first course I did. I dived into it head first. And it was, the idea was that I was going to get auditor trained, and you had to do these beginning courses first in order to become an auditor. And this one being all about communication, which is the heart and soul of auditing. So I was doing the theory portion of the course where I was reading Hubbard books and issues and listening to lectures. And there came a point on one chapter where I just could not get this opening paragraph. It just did not make any sense. And I was a well-read 15-year-old, I guess. I was 15 at the time, but I'd read, hundreds, maybe thousands of books in my life. I was a very avid reader. So it was really weird that this sentence, I just could not put it together in such a way as to make it make any sense. And so the supervisor's pat response was, well, what word there did you not fully understand? You need to clear that up. And I couldn't find it. I know these words. I don't, this isn't, and this was all before I was broken into the Scientology study system, so I still had some resistance. I had a little bit of a backbone. I had a little bit of a pushback, right? This was, again, the very first course I did, and it was up in the big academy where all the big real Scientologists do their training. So I was in there with the big fish, right, swimming in the deep waters, and I was a new guy. So I was not indoctrinated on all of this study technology and misunderstood words and using demo kits and all this other rigmarole, right? So I'm pushing back, and the supervisor is not down with this at all. His name was Scott. Nice guy, very funny guy, but indoctrinated Scientologist, right? So he wasn't going to take any lip from some, green 15-year-old telling him that L. Ron Hubbard didn't make any sense, right? Because that's what I was saying. I was saying, this doesn't make sense. I don't know what the deal is, but I just don't get it. And so I wasn't going along with the idea that you should just go find your misunderstood. So he literally removed me from the classroom. I mean, I have a big mouth. I talk loudly, and I guess I was disturbing the other students. So he took me out of the classroom with another student, and we had to sit down in this other private room, and I was protesting the whole time. I'm like, I don't need word clearing. It's not a misunderstood word, right? I was like, I was really mouthing off, and he was like, finally, he's like, I'm sitting there, and he's standing over me, and the other poor student who has to now find my misunderstood words, he's just sitting there going, oh God, this is a little tense. I wasn't trying to make it awkward. I was just trying to express myself. And he was like, he's like, listen, he finally says, that's it, right? Like, that's it. I'm the supervisor, you're the student. I say you do, start, right? And he just walks out. And we were both looking at each other like, oh shit, right? Like, okay, I guess I screwed up there, right? So, and this was 1985. So, anyway, yeah, so just in terms of the time of the culture, whatever. Anyway, I'm telling this whole story because I want you to get that at the beginning, I was bucking the system. I was not a compliant person who just came in and was willing to be rolled over. I considered myself a smart person, and I wasn't going to be talked down to by somebody when I was paying for these courses. But I got broken into that system because resistance is futile. And what ended up happening is then I got used to the pattern of, oh, there's something here I don't get, or I'm going to have a question about something. I better find what word I don't understand. And it just became this sort of thing that you can convince yourself to do, and you sort things out. And sometimes you go and you look for words you don't understand, and you find them, and you're like, wow, that actually helped me understand this better. So it's not like it doesn't work, but it's not always the thing that's impeding your understanding, right? That's the problem, and they always insist it is. So, sometimes it's helpful, but when it's not helpful, it's not helpful. And you just kind of learn as a Scientologist student to gloss over those questions. Well, maybe it'll be clarified later, or maybe it's unimportant, right? I don't really need to understand this in order to understand the bigger context of what I'm reading, so I'll just pass it by. Which is pretty much what people do anyway in the big wide world, right? So it's not like it's that weird. It's just you adopt these ideas and you kind of blind yourself to them so that you can continue thinking that, oh yes, it's always the misunderstood word, right? Because you have to accept the dogma. So as the years went on, I became a better and better Scientology student. And I got very fast, actually. I got really good as a student. And because I got trained as a supervisor and I was supervising other people, I ended up learning so much more Scientology than I would have if I had just taken regular classes going up that bridge to total freedom. I was teaching others all the classes because that's the way the course rooms are run, is one supervisor can supervise 20 people and every one of them can be on a different class, taking a different course. So you're learning what they're learning, kind of, when they ask you questions at least, and you have to go in and look and see what the deal is. And you're not supposed to, according to policy in Scientology, you're not supposed to have to know the subject in order to supervise it. The supervisors only have to know the study tech, right? They don't have to know what you're reading. They just have to know to tell you to go find your misunderstood word if you're manifesting questions about it or confusions. So anyway, I'm kind of going on and on about all the study tech here, but it had a lot to do with how I adjusted myself in learning. Unfortunately, that also, because of the constant pressure to speed up and get through classes quickly, because that's always a thing. Get the statistics, and course completions is one of the statistics that they follow. So you're always being rushed through your classes, and that was a negative, because that was a big negative, because I didn't retain the data as well, because I didn't study it as deeply as I wanted to or could have. And perhaps, had I done so, I might have seen more inconsistencies in the material more quickly than, because now I see it very easily. But at the time, you're kind of rushing through it, so you're just trying to get the main points, and you'll get down into the details later, unless the details are super important for some specific reason. So that was kind of I got to become a very fast student because I wanted to be a successful student, and I wanted to be, get good statistics and that kind of thing. And so I became a more superficial student in many ways. And that was kind of a thing, because then I ended up having to go back over the materials over and over again, is what would end up happening, because it's, maybe you don't get everything on the first pass, especially when you're speeding through it, but then you go through the second pass or a third pass. I mean, I did supervisor training, I think 4 different times. I did, and again, as a supervisor, you go over the materials over and over again. So I think my experience was not necessarily representative of every other Scientologist's experience. Maybe in looking at this whole story I've been telling here, we see that, I've got a bit of a deeper experience with the study than a lot of other Scientologists did. So anyway, Mike, I hope that gives some more data on that and is useful, helpful data for you.